Is eating pork a salvation issue? Logic 16:11. What the books say.
Today, we're going to real quickly answer the question: is eating pork a salvation issue? All right. Because you got people out there that think that you can just eat whatever you want and still claim to follow the scriptures, right? So, we're going to bring some clarity to this today. All right. First, we're going to start with Acts chapter 5, verse 29. It says, Then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, We ought to obey God rather than men. All right. So this is going to be very important. All right. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to jump into it. We're going to answer the question: is eating pork, eating swine, a salvation issue? So we're going to start off first in the dietary law of the Bible, right? The Torah, the law. All right. As we know, sin is transgression of the law. All right. So when we go to Leviticus chapter 11, verse 7, it clearly states, And the swine, though he divideth the hoof, be cloven footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you. Of their flesh shall ye not eat, and their carcass shall ye not touch. They are unclean to you. All right? This is clear. But we want to get a second witness. All right, guys, so here we are again with a second witness. Deuteronomy chapter 14, once again, restating the dietary law. Verse 3 clearly states, Thou shalt not eat any abominable thing. All right. Jumping down to verse 7, it says, Nevertheless, these ye shall not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the cloven hoof, as the camel and the hare and the coney, for they chew the cud, but divide not the hoof. Therefore they are unclean to you. And the swine, because it divideth the hoof, yet cheweth not the cud, it is unclean unto you. Ye shall not eat of their flesh, nor touch their dead carcass. All right, this is clear. This is clear, guys. All right, guys. Here we are. We're back with Isaiah chapter 65, verses. I'm going to start at verse number 2. It says, I have spread out my hands all the day unto a rebellious people, which walketh in a way that was not good, after their own thoughts, a people that provoketh me to anger continually to my face, that sacrificeth in gardens, and burneth incense upon altars of brick, which remain among the graves, and lodge in the monuments, which eat swine's flesh, and broth of abominable things is in their vessels, which say, Stand by thyself, come not near to me, for I am holier than thou. These are a smoke in my nose, and a fire that burneth all day. All right, so this is clear. Once again, verse 4 clearly states, which remain among the graves and lodge in the monuments, which eat swine's flesh and the broth of abominable things is in their vessels. Okay, so we're going to continue on because we want to prove clearly that this is a salvation issue, right? We're going to hop over to chapter 66. All right, here we are, chapter 66, verse 15. For behold, the Lord will come with fire and with his chariots like a whirlwind to render his anger with fury and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination and the mouse shall be consumed together, saith the Lord. Okay. Now, for anybody keeping track here, this is a future prophecy. This hasn't happened yet. Okay. The Lord has not come back with fire and with chariots like a whirlwind to render his anger with fury and his rebuke with flames of fire. All right. This is a future prophecy. It clearly states in verse 16, for by fire by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain, or the dead of the Lord shall be many. Okay. And it specifies who are these? They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the garden behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination and the mouse shall be consumed together, saith the Lord. All right. This is clear. All right. So you'll have some people, however, who will try to say, oh no, we can just pray over the thing that God told us not to eat. Okay. And all that nonsense. But here in Job chapter 14, verse 4, because we have to go with what God says rather than man. What does the book say? It clearly states, who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean? Not one. Now we're here in what's called the New Testament or the Renewed Covenant. It clearly states, this is the end of the book. It says, but the fearful, unbelieving, and the abominable, and murderers, and whoremongers, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is a second death. So when you eat these things, you make your body abominable. You have abominable things in your vessel, just like it mentioned over in the book of Isaiah, in the prophet Isaiah. All right. These things have not changed. Okay. Now, someone will say, well, wait a minute. Doesn't it say Christ made all foods clean? Well, let's take a look at that. Here we are in Mark chapter 7, verse 19. And this is the actual Greek. Okay. And as you can clearly see, it says, because not it enters of him into the heart, but into the belly, and into the sewer goes out, purifying all the food. Okay. But nowhere in here in the Greek text does it say, by saying this, he made all foods clean. Let's get a comparison. Here's the parallel, Mark 7:19. As we can see in the NIV version, it adds that in there in the parentheses. Okay, you can clearly see that. In all these, translations where they've been modified and taken things out, which we're told not to do in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 2, Deuteronomy chapter 12:32, and Revelations chapter 22, verse 18 and 19. All right. So you can see here, this is added in here. Okay. That doesn't mean you can eat pork. Okay. And I'm going to prove that because when we go down here to the King James Version, you clearly see that that's not added in there. That's a thing of modern translations where they go in and they add that. Why? Because other Bibles added it and they just simply follow suit and print these things out to make additional money. If you want to get a good Bible, I recommend personally, King James Version Bible or even the Hebrew Israelite Scriptures Bible. Excellent translations. All right. So here you can clearly see these things. Even in the New King James, it doesn't add in Jesus made all foods clean. Okay. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of clarity. To finish up, clearly, it says in Psalms 89:34, my covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that has gone out of my lips. So whenever there's a question, you have to always ask,
what the books say.